Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to DSI Facebook Live Q&A session with Dr. Paul Homoly. Thanks for being here, Paul.
Hey, I'm excited about this. We've been talking about this for a while, so let's get started.
Let's do it. We've got our technical difficulties out of the way, and now we're ready. I tried to reconnect just now. It wouldn't let me get my camera going. So that's one of those things that's a reality with Facebook Live. I know that a lot of our speakers in our group are just learning about Facebook Live and exploring different options. And one of the things I love about it is that we can just kind of roll and have a conversation. So tonight we're going to do a Q&A session. And I want to, before we even get started, invite those who tune in to give us your questions for Paul. We just put them in post them in the comments, and let us know you're here. Shout out a hello. We'd love to say hello to you. See, we're already starting to acquire some viewers on this session, so thank you for being here. Now, let me start by introducing our guest, who I don't know that he really needs an introduction. I think pretty much everybody knows you, Paul. But let me go ahead.
An introduction.
We'll still do an introduction for those who may be newer to dental. So Dr. Paul Homoly, CSP, is a world-class leader in dental education. He provides seminars, workshops, and consultations on the topics of dental case management, dental case acceptance, practice management, key opinion leadership, speaking. I mean, this is a wide range of subjects, and a wide range of experience. Paul is regarded as one of the top communication coaches, consultants, and speakers in our industry. And in fact, he has earned the highest designation through the National Speakers Association, the CSP, which is the Certified Speaking Professional. Did I get it right?
You got it right. And that, that's no easy hill to climb either. The CSP designation is, I believe it's fewer than 15% of professional speakers literally worldwide. It's the highest earned designation in professional speaking. And it's something that I started many, many years ago when I joined the National Speakers Association, which is probably over 25 years ago, to tell you the truth. So, well, thanks for having me, and let's get this thing going.
Yes, and I'm just looking away to make sure looks like we are live. Very good. So thank you all for being here. Well, we have some questions coming in. Super excited about this. Now, before we dive into our questions, just want to harken back to our Jumpstart meeting a couple months ago. Paul, you gave us a really meaty workshop. We talked about thought leadership, a little bit about story selling, and how to discover and craft our stories, how to find the humor in our stories, how, when, and why stories can help us build our reputation. And wanted to thank you for that very solid and again, meaty workshop. I've heard really great comments come out of that where people are really putting that into use in their program. So thank you for sharing.
Well, you're welcome. The whole topic of storytelling is one that I would say storytelling and humor to speakers is only slightly less important than oxygen when you think about it. If you think about the speakers that you hear that are really engaging, people that are inspire your imagination, these are the ones that are the great storytellers. These are the ones that use humor. And, and sometimes, Vanessa, especially for the universe of people who are listening to us right now, we're content experts. We're not entertainers. We're not up there juggling. We're not stand-up comedians, but rather we're content experts. And content experts tend to deliver content as experts. And unfortunately, experts aren't always interesting. So the whole topic of storytelling and humor is really extra important to people like us who might be talking on what they would consider a dry topic, and how to take that topic and really make it come to life. So we had a great crowd. We had a lot of good feedback. We had some giveaways. We had a contest. So I'm looking forward to next year too.
Oh, me too. Hey, thank you for that. And now can you maybe get us started by giving us a little idea of, how did you get started as a speaker in dentistry?
Well, I was first a dentist. I gave a small table clinic at the Grove Park Inn in Western North Carolina. It was just a small little table clinic on dental implants. That was 1979. I placed my first implant in 1978. In '79, there was the Regional Dental Society meeting. They had a call for papers for table clinics. So I did a little table clinic, and I enjoyed it. And that table clinic led to a couple study club presentations. And next thing I did, I found myself, I joined Toastmasters. Actually, I was a Toastmasters prior to any speaking that I did in dentistry. I was a Toastmaster. So I just brought my Toastmaster training combined it with my dental training and started doing study club meetings. And I had a knack for it. And from there, joined the National Speakers Association. The National Speakers Association, to tell you the truth, was more pure information for me. It had, you go to the NSA meeting and it's oftentimes over the top. Just a lot of keynoters there, and I really enjoy that. But in our universe of dental, keynoting is not a prime distribution method for us speakers. Typically, we're breakout session speakers or general session speakers who speak on various topics. Those topics typically would have substance to them, with calls to action. They're very linear in their approach, and they're outcome oriented, as opposed to just telling stories and entertaining. So I, along with that, I joined the National Storytellers Association. Now there is an association to get involved with. That was really nice. Then over the years, my work, I developed content, and that's the big thing in terms of speakers. A lot of people say, well, I want to be a speaker. And you need to think about speaking as a distribution system for your intellectual property. Speaking is only one way to get your content, or I'm going to use the phrase intellectual property and content interchangeably here as we go through it. But when you say I want to be a speaker, that means I'm going to use speaking, live speaking, as the distribution process for my content. Well, there are multiple ways to distribute your content: online, publishing, what we're doing right here. And so my advice would be that whoops, I hear some back talk there or something. My advice is that a lot of speakers, Vanessa, they're a little bit like truck drivers. Truck drivers go from place to place to place, driving their truck around. And what I would say, before you start driving your truck around, well, let me ask you, what's in the truck? What are you driving around from space to space? And get really clear about what's your content niche? How deep are you going into your content? That would be one of the first things that I would say to an aspiring speaker. People that come up to me say, I want to be a speaker. I want to be, like you or Vanessa or, Catherine or any one of the people that are in our speaking culture. They get all excited about it. I say, terrific, what are you going to speak about? I don't know. I just want to be a speaker. Well, that's not the way to go about it.
Right.
If you simply want to be a speaker, here's what I would do. Join Toastmasters and learn the oral art. Learn the oral art. And then while you're doing that, begin to land on and create original ideas and learn to express them in ways that people haven't heard before. Then when you do get a speaking opportunity, then you can excel in an opportunity. The last thing you want to do is go into a speaking opportunity, a study club or a regional meeting and bomb. If you bomb, the word gets out there that you bombed. That's not good. It'll become much harder for you to overcome that going forward. So you're better off doing very little early on, but developing your content and running your content past more experienced content experts or more experienced speakers and have them shape. That's why I really like what you're doing with the Start program, is you're giving new speakers opportunities to network with more seasoned people. So if somebody shows me something.
Ooh, we're having a little bit of internet trouble, I think. I'm not sure if we're continuing. Are you still there, Paul? There we go. We had a little hiccup there. It might be internet on my end. I'm sorry. Are you hearing? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you fine.
Okay, awesome. I'm sorry. About the last 20 seconds, we didn't catch, or at least I didn't catch. That's the realities of internet, right?
like I say. Yeah. Well, the point was the advice to the early entry speaker is get some content that's unique, and be able to express it in a way that people haven't heard before. And I was saying that was one of the advantages. That's one of the big advantages of your Jumpstart program, is that new speakers can meet more seasoned people to test drive the material. If someone comes up to me and says, hey, I got this great idea for a speech, and they show it to me, and it's material that's been said before and it's been beat to death, they may not know that. They may think, oh, this is a great idea. I read it in a book somewhere. And believe me, there's plenty of speakers out there who read books and then that becomes their speech. Well, that isn't their content. So anyway, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a lot of really great advice. Thank you for that advice for the person who's early in their career. And I'd like to just piggyback on that and say, I also got started with Toastmasters, and I love Toastmasters. I think it is, you get such a bang for the buck. I mean, it's like $10 a month or something, right? And you can go every week. And you can really work out your 5 to 7 minute presentations that ultimately become a bigger presentation. I always encourage the newer speaker to check out their local Toastmasters. And I'm pretty sure they even have virtual attendance at Toastmasters now, which is way cool. So if you're in the middle of Nebraska and there's not really a close, group. And I want to say, hey, we've got Michael Clark here from Care Credit. Hey, Michael, thanks for your feedback. We've had a little bit of intermittent stalls in the video is what we're learning. We've got Paulson here and Susan Cotton and Kevin Thurman and Travis Rogers. And we've got a lot of our jump starters here. Thanks you guys for being here and listening in. We do have a question already, Paul, around learning more about your workshops. I'd like to hold that to the end of our conversation, if that would be all right. And we'll circle back, Kevin. We'll be sure and circle back to talk a little bit more about what is involved with those workshops. But we talked a little bit just now about the beginning speaker, some advice for the beginner. Let's jump to the other end of the spectrum. So say I've been speaking for 10, 20 years. What advice would you give somebody who's, seasoned?
Well, for the seasoned speaker really should be thinking about packaging their intellectual property, packaging it in white papers, books, articles, online programs, licensing arrangements, those types of things that will allow them to leverage speaking. And again, I'll go back to speaking is not a highly leveraged activity. Oh, it may make you feel real good about getting applause and all of that. And I believe there's a lot of value in that. I built my career on as a speaker. But in the last 10 years of my career, my almost sole focus has been on creation of intellectual property. My books, the audios, the online program. That way, I don't have to get on an airplane to earn an income. I can sit right where I'm at right now and earn an income. Now, do I still do speaking? Of course I do. But because of my intellectual property, I've got far more depth of content. My content is far greater original content. That way, I begin to kind of leave a path for others to follow. Instead of me quoting Einstein and all the familiar quotes that you hear, the goal of the experienced speaker, my personal goal, is to create content where others are quoting me. That's the role, in my opinion, of the experienced speaker, is to begin to evolve. I don't want to say away from speaking, Vanessa, but to be more inclusive of really sitting down and package what you know. That's what my thought leadership workshop. You attended that.
Yes.
Attended it. And you can do 50 speeches a year, but if you can't package your wisdom, if for some reason you get stalled when you're maybe writing a white paper, or you're saying to yourself, I really need to write a book. And you get stuck and you get stalled on it. It could be, maybe it's not your writing style that's keeping you in one place. Maybe you simply don't understand your content well enough. Maybe there's not enough clarity there. You see, when you do a speech, when you're done with the speech is gone. But when you write a book has shelf life. When you write a white paper, shelf life. When you begin to publish, shelf life. That way your content, your ideas, your unique position, and probably best said, your personal brand endures, whereas the speech can go up in air. So you want to really do both as the experienced speaker. One, develop intellectual property, and two, get really, really good with storytelling and humor. Because see, that ultimately is the big distinction in the marketplace. Great storytelling in clean, authentic, relevant humor to accentuate those points. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying before.
Yeah.
Because in dental, we're basically content speakers. You know, if you're speaking about pharmacology or sleep apnea or the oral systemic link, these aren't topics that people typically tap dance to. They're pretty cognitive. Now, you can present very cognitive topics in a very interesting way. Then you become, now you can change the domain. Now you can move the industry where you can take something that's solid content-wise and make it fun and interesting and memorable and engaging. When you do that, now you're really carving a niche for yourself in the marketplace.
I agree with you, and I recognize that about myself as a speaker. I think it's not challenging to have a conversation with an audience about the type of thing you coach on every day. Where I really struggle is finding the right stories to go with the points and to be able to put enough of that in to be able to keep it ebbing and flowing, and which makes me think about the speakers workshop. So I've been to 2 of your workshops. The first one was, and you have to remind me because they have such clever titles, is Just Because You're an Expert Doesn't Make You Interesting, is the speaker workshop, the first one, right?
That's right. That's the first one. Just because you're an expert doesn't make you interesting. And that workshop, if you remember, focused on really 2 areas. Number one was delivery, connecting with an audience, using movement to convey confidence, using your voice, the dynamics of your voice to create peaks of interest, and taking connection, movement, and dynamics, and then putting your content on top of all of that. And we spent all day, if you remember, in front of the room, everybody was doing those exercises we put together. On day two is all about the structure of putting a talk together. You know, you get the phone call to do a big meeting. They'll say, hey, our general session speaker had to cancel. We heard that you're really cool. I know this is last minute, but will you take the engagement? And it's 2 weeks from now, and you've got a general session or a big breakout session to do. Now you've got to put together a 90-minute presentation to an audience of 850, right? A nice size audience. So what do? Most speakers would get bogged down and they would dig into their PowerPoint slide sorter program and start moving things around. And what happens too often, Vanessa, is that we don't express ourselves as thought leaders. We express ourselves as thought repeaters. We take what we've known and we kind of mix it up and then put it out there. Whereas when you have a process for assembling a program, you can assemble, you saw it, you were at the workshop. We put together some great programs in 10, 15 minutes. Bang, we got it.
5 minutes even.
Yeah, we did. Actually, we're doing it in 5 minutes after we've done it a couple of times when you understand the process. So just because you're an expert doesn't make you interesting really is the program that I suggest. If people are going to get involved with my stuff, come on to do that program first. That way you get a real good sense of who I am and what the content is. And as you know, it's pretty much of a blast.
I agree. And you know, the reason I brought that up is because I think about that workshop a lot. And I find myself that in the course of my day, as I'm coaching speakers, especially those who are newer and who are trying to figure out, how do I put together this presentation? 3 hours feels so much information when I don't have anything created. I often think about that template that we get from you that we use to create those courses. And I've shared that multiple times with people. What I remember is that I worked with a couple people I met at the workshop, so we didn't have any past experience together. We didn't have any overlapping skill sets, but we would come up with a topic out of the blue, and I'm pretty sure ours was about we were going to talk about the importance of attending our camp for parents of troubled teenagers or something. We just pulled the topic out of the air, and literally within 5 minutes we pulled together a story and a point, and it's like we followed the each of the ups and downs in the template, and it's just so impactful. And thank you for putting together usable tools that could be used that could be a TED Talk, that could be a 5-minute Toastmasters talk, that could be a keynote. I mean, I'm assuming with some modification, but it breaks it down to where it's so easy to digest, especially for the new person, that we all can put those data points in there because we're experts in these areas. But it's really helpful to have a format to understand how to add in the stories and the analogies and the quotes and all of that.
Well, and that's what content experts need. You see, it's dangerous to rely on your dazzle to put a good talk together. Personality is dangerous when it comes to program structure. And plus, dazzle isn't a core competency of people like us, people that are content experts. We're not dazzlers. If dazzle was a core competency of we wouldn't be dentists or dental assistants or dental hygienists. We'd be in the School of Fine Arts, and we'd be doing something completely different. Yeah. Our strengths are cognitive strengths in following processes. And that's what the first workshop is all about, is how do logical thinkers like us, how to use a process to put a talk together that feels like dazzle. It will feel like dazzle to the audience, but to us, it's a process that we put together. That's why I named it. Just because you're an expert doesn't make you interesting.
That's a fabulous workshop that I think I could probably take over and over and keep getting better at. I want to just point out, since we're talking about it, those dates are coming up, June 6th and 7th here in the Phoenix area, I believe. Is that?
That's right. June 6th and 7th, it'll be in Gilbert. It'll be at the Falls Center. And we limit that to about 10 or 15 students. That way, everybody gets plenty of time in front of the room, get plenty of personal coaching.
I love that. I love that about your workshops, in that it feels like I have your attention. It's not such a big group. I really feel like I can get your thoughts, and it's so fun to watch the thoughts just pop. You definitely are in your brilliance during these workshops. So
that's why people attend. I mean, how many times have we gone to seminars or workshops and we've had high expectations, and maybe they were good, but they weren't seismic in their transformative qualities to what's going on in your career. I've made a real point in my instructional design that I go deep, not broad. I would much rather have an incredible experience for a smaller group than have a diluted experience for a large group. And understand, I do well with large groups. I like large groups. But if somebody's going to get off their wallet and attend one of my workshops for 2 days and spend 2 days with me, I don't want them to miss the opportunity for transformative growth. And you can't do that with a big audience. It's got to be small enough to where I've got the time to help people express, help people become the best versions of themselves in front of the room. And people do it. You saw the transformation, Vanessa, in folks.
Oh yeah, and it's it really stays with you. It's been a couple of years for me, and I can remember it still also clearly both days. It really had great impact. I'm noticing we have questions and comments, and Susan Cotton is commenting how she recently attended and what a great experience it was for her. We got some comments in here. Thank you, Susan. Kay Huff is asking, Paul, help us know a little bit more about PowerPoint. She asked, what do you think about PowerPoint? And I would ask, what are your thoughts on how can we use PowerPoint effectively?
You're probably not going to like the answer, but I think the less you use it, the better. Here's why. So much of the presentations and the lectures, if you want to call that in dentistry, people aren't really speaking. What they're doing, they're narrating their PowerPoint. I work with speakers all the time as private students. They send me their PowerPoint slide. They'll send me 300 slides for a 90-minute talk. I'm going, that's just mindless. And what they're doing is they're just reading their slides. And I would say to you that If there's something that you really want people to remember and know and have, put it in the slide, or better yet, in addition to that, put it in a handout. Don't show me a slide that you have to say, well, you probably won't be able to read this, right? Because that's a waste of everybody's time. So what you want people to know, what you want people to have, put in a handout. What you want people to feel, you do with delivery. Now, here's the big piece with PowerPoint. When you're trying to establish a sense of theme, or telling a story, or trying to inspire imagination, don't have any slide up at all. Vanessa, you've seen me speak. I would say if I speak for 90 minutes, I would probably have half of that time easily with no slide at all. I would have the slide, the screen would be black. That way, I'm not competing for the attention of the listener. If there is a slide up and now I'm telling a story, right? Or giving some content, where is the listener's attention? They're looking at the slide, they're looking at me, they're looking at the slide, and audiences get slide anxiety. You put a slide up, what are they waiting for? Well, they're waiting for the next slide. That diminishes their attention span to what you're saying. So, boy, my advice would be use PowerPoint as a visual aid, not as a teleprompter. That would be my advice.
Awesome. That's really good advice. I think seasoned speakers have found this to be the true, the reality of it. The more we speak, I think I see speakers move in that direction over time.
Well, think about it. What's the role of a speaker if it isn't to inspire an audience? Because live interaction, Vanessa, as you know, is the strongest form. I mean, what we're doing now is good, but it's not even close to what you would experience if we were live. Well, if you have the opportunity to be live, why diminish it through competing with a PowerPoint program? You can put the content in a PowerPoint in a handout, or have them download it, or there's a lot of ways for them to access that information. Speaking is about inspiration. It's about giving people maybe a bigger or a more magnificent vision or imagination of who they could be. It's about allowing people to walk away from the illusions of believing that who they are today is all they'll ever be. And if you deliver messages like that, then, and if a PowerPoint slide is up while I'm saying something like that, then people get lost in it. So avoid using PowerPoint as a teleprompter. Big advice right there.
Yeah, that's the takeaway for sure.
Yeah.
And less is more. That's what I'm
less is
hearing
more.
you say. Definitely. Right. Okay, so we had another question about, well, Kevin asked us early on to talk about your workshops. I'd like to jump over to thought leadership. And maybe as you answer this question, you could tell us a little bit more about that workshop too. But going back to something we talked about earlier around intellectual property and becoming maybe an influencer, one of the big takeaways that I had from your just because you're a speaker doesn't make you a thought leader.
Yes.
Workshop. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
One of my big takeaways was that's perfect for people who have been doing this for a while, and they have their own systems, they have their own processes. They're like out on that they're leaning toward that leading edge anyway. Is that how you would suggest it? And what I walked away thinking was, it's an opportunity for us to really carve out a niche for ourselves as influencers in our industry.
And ask the question again. I wasn't sure I got the essence.
I don't know if there was a question as much of just preaching to the choir that I'm doing or something about what I really walked away from with that is I went into it, I thought, I want to learn about this thought leadership, and what I picked up right away, and what impressed me about that workshop too, is that you pretty much taught us like the gist of it in the first hour, and like the rest of the 2 days was breaking each of those 8 sections down, and we worked on our own stuff. I mean, so
Right.
you explained what we were going to be doing, and then we really did it. And so one of the big takeaways for me was that you're right for this workshop when you're to that place where you're not the thought regurgitator. When you're out there, you're already pushing out to that leading edge. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt to me like for those people who've been doing this a while, who have a message in there and they're wanting to carve out their own niche and their own message and really be seen as an influencer. Is that who you think would be appropriate for that type of material? And can you talk to us about what you cover in that workshop?
Well, sure. The Thought Leaders Workshop is best for people who have been around for a while and also have been through the first workshop. Just because you're an expert doesn't make you lit, because the Thought Leadership Program really is a continuation. Remember, the first workshop was about delivery and presentation architecture, but I don't do anything for content in that first workshop. The second workshop is all about content. It's all about how to, number one, get deeper insights into your existing material. Again, I've looked at hundreds of PowerPoint programs, and I've evaluated literally hundreds of presentations. And I see almost every time, Vanessa, when I'm working with someone, I see insights into their own talks that they don't see. And that's really easy to do because we get so close to our own material that we don't see it. Believe me, I have mentors that look at my material and say, hey, what about this? What about that? And I go, geez, I missed that. I had no idea. So the Thought Leaders Workshop is, number one, let's look at your existing content and how do we find additional richness in that? Number two, how can we create original content? That is content that may be associated with your stuff, but stuff that's truly original content that you haven't seen in the marketplace before in that version that you would get to. And that's when I use that thought leadership cycle, those 8 particular steps. And you saw it when you were there. Everybody got to the point where we were looking at original content for folks. And that's when there it is.
I got it sitting right here.
There it is right there. And that's the Thought Leaders cycle right there, those 8 steps. You work around that. You work from step 1 through step 8. And it takes us a day and a half to do that. But what you end up with is a different way of thinking. You hear the phrase, let's think outside the box. Well, come on, how many times have you turned on a word processor program? It's Saturday morning, you've got a bunch of time, and you've set the time away to really pound out some new stuff. I'm gonna get some good ideas. I want to add some new stuff to my program because maybe you're tired of your content. That happens to experienced speakers. So you turn on the word processor, and that little word processor cursor is going like this, and next thing you know, you're checking your emails, then you're feeding your cats, and then you're doing something else. You see, to think outside the box, it's a lot easier to say it than it is to actually do it. And what I would say is stop trying to think outside the box and instead use a process to get you out of the box. When you got a process, now you got a path to follow. And it isn't about you being wildly creative. It's just about you following the steps. And within those steps, inspirational sparks begin to fly as you experienced when you were there.
And it's authentic, and it's really it's what's inside you that you're not seeing that comes out. It's not what you create for us, but it's more like it's pulled out of us. And I think the whole idea is to really be it's a differentiator for your materials. You may be speaking in practice management like so many of your colleagues, but using steps like these to help your materials accurately reflect and give some new breath to topics that we have learned about for years, I think is what really helps set speakers and consultants aside as influencers.
Well, sure. That's what constitutes brand. Brand is what distinguishes you in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And, basically it's going to be two things: the originality of your content and the quality of your delivery. That's it. And if your content is old and your delivery is, average, well then, yeah, you're going to struggle. You're going to be complaining, well, I need to get more sponsors, or I need to redo my website, or whatever, and most of the time it's none of that. What it really is that what you're saying has been said before in ways that you're saying it. And I'm not trying to discourage anybody. What I'm trying to do is people come to me and they say, hey, I need help. And I'm saying, well, look in the mirror, look at your content. Let's take it to another level. And when they take it to another level, what happens is they become beginners again. And that's when this surge of originality and authenticity comes out. They're not stuck in their old content, and they begin to see new paths and new visions. And that invigorates their spirit, and that comes out in their delivery, and you see it. Yeah. So I'm not trying to pound on anybody's content. I'm just saying, maybe it's not the fact that your website sucks. Maybe your content does.
Needs reinvigorating for sure. It is exciting to see it all come together.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And believe me, I take the same medicine I'm giving to everybody else.
Yeah.
I sit at my desk, Vanessa, and every day I'm spending a bit of every day rethinking, what am I doing? Could I do it better? Is there a way in? Should I say it like this? I'm constantly tinkering with things to continually grow. And that is probably the very best reason to be involved in what you and I and everybody else are doing around here. Is why be a speaker? Why be a content expert? Why be a thought leader? In order to do it well, you've got to continually grow. And that's good for us spiritually and emotionally and mentally. It keeps us from aging. It keeps us from getting dementia when we use our minds in those types of ways.
Mm. Hidden health benefits of being a speaker. I mean, you're absolutely right. Okay. Yeah. Now I want to put up the dates. So we talked a little bit about your thought leadership workshop, and I want to ask you, I'm going to move us to another topic. But before I do, I want to make sure I've got it. September 13 and 14 of this year will be the next version, next workshop for Just Because You're a Speaker Doesn't Make You a Thought Leader, which is the one we were just talking about. So I'm going to put those dates up at the bottom here. Okay. And all these workshops more information can be found at paulhomoly.com. I've a couple of times put the website up, and Paul can be reached at paul@paulhomoly.com. We've had a question or two about that in here as well. Okay. So
sure.
Now, I would like to ask you for I'm going to ask you a pretty broad question, but I'd like your top answer for this. And this would be on...
A tough answer? Is that what you said?
Your one top answer. Like, if you had to boil it down to the one thing you know for sure.
Okay, one thing.
And this would be on the subject of building a speaking business. So from the business side, because we've talked about content, presentation skills, content development, but on the other side, the business side of this, especially in dental, for speaking, what would you share with our listeners? What is the one thing you know for sure that helps dental professionals build their speaking business?
Wow. Well, here's an absolute fact. If you do a talk, and during that talk, during a break, or at the end of the program, if one or more people aren't coming up to you at the end of the talk, handing you their business card and saying, wow, that was terrific. I'd like to talk to you about doing a program in our area. All right. If that's not happening, I don't care how good your evaluations are. You can get all 10s on your evaluations. But if you're not getting additional business or additional prospects during or immediately following your talk, then your talk's not strong enough.
Excellent.
Even though the evaluations say, you're wonderful, you changed my life, I love the story about your cats or whatever, and all that's good. Said build a business, right? Build a business is that every speech is a marketing event. So each speech leads to 2 or more. If you don't do that, then you're stuck in having to grind it out with, social media and all that. And believe me, I grind on social media myself. You know that. We all do it. But what's made my life so much easier is that I typically will generate 1 or more speeches from a speech that I did. I was just up in Ottawa, Canada. I was up in Canada. And I got 2 invitations out of that experience. Well, the 2 leads, 4 leads to 8. And then a speaker doesn't have to put a lot of time into, rattling the cages and beating the bushes to find presentations. You can take your time and put it into development of intellectual property.
Right. That's about getting that ball rolling, isn't it? Like the marketing. And it's funny, I would say exactly the same, but it's just worded just slightly differently, right? Because that is the measuring stick to know if your presentation is ready or not, is are you getting spin-off business?
Right.
And the conundrum for the early speaker who doesn't have the bookings yet is, well, how do I get the bookings? And so we need to get these marketing campaigns and process to get going. But I've seen this so many times that you can pull back on some of your marketing as you're speaking does the marketing for you as you continue to present. So thank you. I love that. I love that tip. Now, I want to ask you one more question before we go.
Well, we don't. Let me drop a bomb here for new speakers or for any speaker who's having trouble building their business. Then look at your storytelling and your humor. And that's a workshop that we give. We've got one coming up in July, 26th and 27th is our storytelling and humor workshop. And joining me in that workshop is Carlos Rodriguez. I think many of you may know Carlos. Carlos is a professional stand-up comedian, plus he's a dental hygienist. Carlos is a buddy of mine. And we've worked on each other's material, and I've asked him to join me in that work. It's going to be 2 days. And it's going to be stories and humor. And I'm telling you that when you can tell great stories and clean, authentic humor, as I said at the beginning of this Facebook event here, that's a big distinction, a big lever arm in the marketplace to begin to build business. Okay, big time. Content, you can't compete on content. I'll tell you that right now. And you can't compete with audio visual. You can have the best PowerPoint program in the world. You can have the most astute content, and it'll be a struggle for you. You will not. 25 years ago, yes, you could get away with it. But now, Vanessa, there's far too much content. Content is commoditized right now. You can go on the internet and pull up just about anything any speaker would say. So what makes a speaker valuable? It's going to be how they distinguish themselves through story, humor, and authenticity.
I think you just answered my question before I ask it. What I was going to ask is, how do you make your presentations more interesting, memorable, and persuasive? And I think that ultimately that's the answer. So let me tweak my question a little bit. Okay. Since that ultimately leads us to the importance of humor and storytelling. Is there one tip around either, finding the humor in our own day-to-day, not like trying to come up with a joke or something, but like in our own stories? Is there one tip around storytelling or finding the humor that you would want to leave our Facebook Livers with tonight?
Well, I think the misbelief with story is that it needs to be a stupendous experience, climbing Mount Everest or surviving cancer or death of a child or some horrendous crucible event that you've been through that you now can report back to everyone how you survived it and what you learned. Okay, that story's only been told about 10 trillion times, okay? The best stories are about ordinary events, but told in an extraordinary way. An ordinary event, and take that ordinary event and put it into language, embroider it in language and image, and conjure up listeners' imaginations and create visual experiences for listeners about very simple things. And you've heard me talk about my daughter's wedding and football games and simple things that you don't need to have some incredible athletic resume or some amazing life experience or some drug addiction that you've overcome or some wild thing. And I'm not saying that you can't talk about those things. I'm saying those are few and far between. In that when you think about as a speaker, our role is to become conscious of our surroundings and then be able to relate our day-to-day experiences to the message you want to give to your audiences. So, Vanessa, I really look at the world through two lenses. The first lens I look at is just how am I living operationally? What's going on today and how do I get through my day? But I also look at my world through the lens of storytelling. And I ask, okay, this event, how can I use that? How can is this a metaphor for my content? For example, yesterday I did something I never did before. One of our neighbors, Dave, has one of these ATVs, these razors, these all-terrain vehicles. The tires are as big as a mountain. We were going 40 miles an hour, flying across the desert, going up and down. I didn't knock my fillings up. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Now, I was in the moment. Believe me, I wasn't thinking about storytelling when I was holding on for dear life. I mean, my hands got cramped because I was holding the crossbars so tight. But now, today and tomorrow, I'm going to look back on that event and I'm going to ask myself, what did it mean? What did it mean between my relationship to Dave? Is the story there? Or is the story about the all-terrain vehicle? What does all-terrain mean? Could I use the all-terrain as a metaphor for complete dentistry? All-terrain, complete dentistry. Be an all-terrain dentist. Or is the story about the desert and how there were certain paths through the desert? We got 600,000 miles of desert, right? And there are certain paths. So is the story about paths that we follow as human beings to seek fulfillment? You see, so there's multiple ways into that very common event. And so the advice that I would give about storytelling is you live twice as a speaker. You live twice as a storyteller. You live the event itself, but then you have the privilege of reliving it in your mind and pulling the meaning, pulling the relevance from it, and then delivering it to your audience in ways that will please them and allow them to think in terms that they may haven't thought before.
I love that. Sorry for the doorbell. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking how this is a reminder that as things happen, we need to make notes to ourselves too of these things that happen that we think, oh, that might be a good story. We'll lose it if we don't jot it down somewhere. Would you agree? Have some kind of journal?
Yeah, and I've got a folder on my computer. Well, I'll just open a folder. I've got the folder is called Stories 2019, and I'll open up a word processor and I'll just write a razor ride with Dave, and then that's it. Mm-hmm. And then when I start thinking about it, when I begin to work on that story, or when I'm looking for story, I'll just go back to this. Okay, the razor ride. Okay, that's interesting. How can I use that? And then I begin to bake. And that's what the storytelling workshop is about, is how do you do that? No. It's easy for me to say it, but I told you about a life event, about an ATV ride. We can have at least 4 or 5 different versions of that event in different stories with different transferable concepts based on what I want to do with it. Well, people need help with that. They need help with the process of how do you discover a story in an ordinary event. It's easy to discover the story in recovering from a heart surgery. Okay, survival, I get it, okay? But you're not going to have heart surgery or overcome cancer or win Wimbledon every day.
Right, exactly. And I love that you're teaching really a transferable process that we can then take back and utilize for all of our stories. So I'm really excited about this. I love that you're doing it with Carlos because I heard him speak recently and he is hilarious.
He's a funny guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome, and he'll be at Jumpstart, and also Paul will be doing a breakout session for us at Jumpstart along these lines. Now it's going to be an hour and a half worth versus a 2-day workshop, and we'll do some similar type concepts in January, but don't wait till January. The next humor workshop will be July 26 to 27, again here at the lovely Falls event center. If you haven't been to that event center, it's pretty amazing. It's gorgeous. And Gilbert, not far from the airport. It's really easy to get to here in the Phoenix area. I would like to reiterate, I've been watching our comments tonight. Several people are really appreciating these. The feedback is that they're very much appreciating your comments and your thoughts, Paul. And I want to reiterate what our friend Catherine Eitel-Belt has said. The master for the masters. And you are. Thank you so much for...
Well, Catherine, I'm Catherine's biggest fan. She and I go back easily 20, 25 years, I would think. And every time, Catherine did a great job at Jumpstart 2019. She talked about how to manage the hecklers and interruptions.
Unexpected.
And boy, I needed to hear that.
Yeah, it was great. And we're super excited for the Jumpstart 2020 program, which will be January 9 through 11, again here in the Phoenix area. It's actually in Mesa. I think kind of a fun thing about our Jumpstart conference is it grows every year, is that we're going to be in a conference center now, Paul, and we're going to be at the Sheraton Wrigleyville, which has its name because it's literally right next door to the Chicago Cubs training facility where they have a little stadium right behind. Yeah, isn't that fun? Wrigleyville. So just a few minutes from the airport. And we're going to have a great meeting with breakout sessions and lots and lots of content. So if you have any questions, listeners, about Jumpstart 2020, feel free to email me, info@thedentalspeaker.com. I'm Vanessa Emerson, your host. We've been here tonight with Dr. Paul Homoly. Paul, I have put up your email, or sorry, your website here. We've got paulhomoly.com, and for an email, let me get this up here for us too, paul@paulhomoly.com. Is that best if they want to reach out?
That's right. That's right.
Information about your workshops is available at paulhomoly.com, and I wholeheartedly endorse and recommend. I think these are must-attends for all dental speakers. So thank you so much for being here and sharing freely with us and providing so much value to our listeners tonight.
All right, good. Hey, and I'll see you guys at Jumpstart 2020, Vanessa. That'll be fun. Hey,
that's right.
All right, good night, everyone.
Good night, all.